The crowd. The most of the time, you shouldn't be too surprised by the negative things that are on your way. Yes, you can convince yourself that you were taken by surprise, but when you look back, you'll usually always see that there were warning signals, indicators that something negative was about to happen. Simply put, you didn't want to acknowledge it or face it. In 2006, Tiffany and I, Bruce Davis, had been married for 9 years at the time this story took place. Although we were raising our 2 kids, who were 6 and 8 when our marriage crashed and burned, I would want to say that they were the ideal years of marital contentment. However, they weren't. Our marriage had its ups and downs, just like any other. We had married shortly after University of Florida graduation in a perfect storm of youthful passion and love. We had connected at a fraternity function. She was the sorority hottie, and I was the frat dude. She likes to tell everyone that before anything happened, we dated for 2 weeks. But in all honesty, upstairs, we had discovered an unoccupied room. It was empty, but covered in wraps and coats and other junk. I moved ahead of her and relished the opportunity to see her. She drew away to meet my gaze directly. I shouldn't do this, Bruce. God knows I want to. I don't know why. I haven't been able to take my eyes off you since I saw you. Do you believe in love at first sight? Naturally, since I'm not a complete moron, I replied, yes, but then I felt guilty. It's a simple statement for a guy to say, but all I can really tell you is that I can't take my eyes off of you. I dunno, Tiffany. I should have known after 2 years of dating that this would not be a marriage made in heaven because she got a degree in business administration and I got a degree in English literature. She was a by-the-numbers business type who loved negotiating deals, figuring out how to get money, and planned what to do with the money when she got it. I liked reading and movies, writing, and playing games. Her mother detested me, as I should have anticipated, but she was a crazy woman who had endured 10 years of suffering after marrying a handsome, big-selling type right out of college. Early on in our dating life, I saw that there wasn't trust between us, but I attempted to tell her mother that I was a different sort of man and that I would never leave her behind. It didn't matter, especially when I determined that writing the great American novel, no less, was what I intended to do and that I needed time and freedom to pursue after graduating. It was in Orange Park, Florida, a sleepy bedroom community south of Jacksonville where Tiffany and I had both grown up, that I eventually found myself employed at a Blockbuster store. Naturally, Tiffany started working for a company that developed real estate and created some of the most expensive yachting, country club, and golf properties on the Northeast Florida coast. Over time, she progressed from a junior associate position to one of the best-paid non-owner positions, managing sales, public relations, government relations, investor relations, and general relations. Old story, when chaos struck any Blockbuster within a 50-mile radius of Jacksonville, I was still employed there, although as a regional troubleshooter and having worked my way up to store manager by choice. I was getting a little down on myself. I'd attempted to write the great American novel 9 times, really finishing it once and up to 123 rejections. Tiffany was earning 10 times my monthly income and salary alone, not to add stock options and other benefits. She also drove a brand new Lexus and dressed in clothing that could only be purchased by traveling to Atlanta or New York. Nevertheless, I paid the energy, phone bill, satellite, and other bills, as well as the home mortgage, which consumed 60% of my monthly income. Every family vacation was spent in one of Tiffany's vehicles, which included the Lexus, her personal Land Rover new Range Rover Sport SUV, or a company vehicle she could borrow whenever she wanted it. Tiffany graciously paid for the gas in every vehicle she drove, not my 1994 Volkswagen Beetle, which was only large enough for me and 1 passenger. Why did we lead such a life? We had separate checking and savings accounts, so there was never any money that was ours. Her insistence that I not be on her bank accounts caused one of our biggest arguments, which nearly brought our marriage to an end in the first 6 months of it, but it was her income and her savings. We nearly didn't get married at all because her mother had one of her boyfriends draft a prenuptial agreement that stated that I couldn't touch any money she brought into the marriage or earned while we were married, but that my income would be joint. I drew the line on that, and after a few months the topic simply vanished. However, she refused to give me separate money for the 2 of us, which infuriated me. Do you lack faith in me? Do you not think I'm trustworthy? You wretched woman, you think I'm going to steal your goddamned money. I had been a little miffed when she told me that I would never be on a joint account with her, that common expenses like the house and utilities belonged to me as the husband, that all the extras, like clothes, food, travel, entertainment, and the kids' schooling, were hers, that her money belonged to her, that she would never attempt to access my accounts. I'm still upset about it. All right, you wretched woman. However, I was unable to overcome her insistence on keeping our money apart. She owned the money. It would always be. Together, we looked old and gray to me. Tiffany lived with her mother and our kids in the large house, and I would hardly have enough money to buy some gruel for breakfast in the morning in the servants' quarters outside. Since Tiffany didn't want me to look foolish at one of her business events since I had to attend, I had to scrimp pennies, so the only new clothes I could afford were those she bought for me. When she buried her head on your chest on Father's Day, trying to repair the wound her poor excuse of a father had left in her heart, or on the evenings following a visit with her mother, you did not hug her. She slapped you in the face with a chunk of ice cream and ran, yelling for your girls to go before the ice cream monster caught them all. She didn't smile at you on the sand dunes at St. Augustine Beach. When you took her down in the dunes and your tiny kids heaped on you to save their mother from the ice cream monster, she did not shower your face with kisses. Here's a small sample of what we had. It wasn't faultless. Not at all. And I believe that deep down I knew that it would all fall apart on me at some point. We were not married in the manner that my parents would have understood it before he passed away. It wasn't a long-term romance. We lived together, got married, and had children. It was never going to be. And occasionally I would worry if Tiffany knew that in private. In many respects, our marriage was fulfilling, but it wasn't really a marriage. In June 2006, the world fell apart on top of me. While I was working on my 11th grade American novel in my office, Caitlin and Kristen barged into the house. Walking in behind them, Tiffany had picked them up from her mother's place. Daddy, I'm going to go surfing with Uncle Stephen. I was greeted with an embrace from Caitlin, 8, who said, and I'm going to learn how to dance the hula. Grandma told me she'd take me to a school on the Big Island where they teach you. We'll be there for a month, so we'll have plenty of time to learn. Oh, I replied, pondering what I had been blind to. That sounds like fun. Where are we going? Caitlin said, oh, we're going to Hawaii. I wish you could go too. What? Mommy said you had to work. I wish you could get off and come with us. Mommy is going to be lonely without you there. I turned to face Tiffany and just gazed at her, but she refused to look away. She was not going to feel humiliated. So we, that is you and the girls, are going to Hawaii for a month and I'm staying home to work, dear. Do I understand? When did all this come up? Several members of the firm booked a hotel on Oahu and have planned a month worth of activities. We've had a great year and the owners are coming along and helping with the expenses. The girls are out of school and Mom was able to get away from the law firm. And Uncle Stephen, would that be Stephen Middleton? All she did was look back at me. Yes, he decided to take his vacation with us. That's all. Adjoining rooms. Is he staying in your hotel? The same hotel. Yes, we're all staying there. Not adjoining rooms. Try to behave like an adult. It's a group vacation, which I'm not a member of. The firm is paying a lot of the expenses, but they're not made of money. They're not paying for spouses. Anybody who wants a spouse has to come up with the money to cover them. I told the girls to go play because Mommy and I needed to talk for a minute. I also gave them a kiss as I reclined back in my swivel chair. They left and I said, well, how much will we have to come up with? And it would have been nice if you'd given me some heads up. I don't know how I'll be able to free up a month away from work. Her look was impenetrable as she continued to stare at me. Upon reflection, I hope it was guilt. I don't think you'll have to worry about that. I expect you'll be staying here. I was shocked by what I had just heard. You don't think I'll be going? She took a seat at my desk's edge and gave me a downward glance. Her hair was cropped short, and she wore a blue dress that accentuated her amazing legs and a scoop neck blouse. I had the costs expensed out. It would cost $8,000 for you to come with us. Can you afford that? I uttered the words aloud to be sure I wasn't going absolutely crazy. You're saying I can't go unless I come up with $8,000 of my money to pay for the trip. It's really only fair, Bruce. This is partially business and partially personal. You know the rules we've set up. You should be responsible for your share of the costs. I thought that your money was for entertainment, family outings, and the like. This doesn't qualify. At last, she turned to face her feet, which were tapping lightly on the office's tile floor. Bruce, this is more business than personal, except for the girls, and Mother will be there for them. And don't forget Uncle Stephen. He'll be along to take care of the girls. Is that all he'll be taking care of? You don't think I ever hear any of the gossip about the guy? I have been to some company outings. I've heard the woman buzzing about him. I know he's gone through most of the secretaries and he's considered hot shit by the married and unmarried women of the company. You ever checked out his equipment? I've been practicing karate for 15 years, so I knew her temper, but even so, she would have struck me across the face. I managed to grab her hand midair. You sorry bastard. I've never cheated on you. Although, God knows, why I haven't I couldn't tell you. You want to know why you're not going with us, Bruce? The real reason. Enlighten me. I could cover your expenses and never even notice it, but why should I? You're my spouse, and I make $300,000 a year in a terrible year, while you make only $40,000. I knew you couldn't come up with $8,000. You are not a moron. It was possible for you to get a real job with a real company, where I wouldn't feel embarrassed each time someone inquires about my husband's activities. A manager of a video store. For the love of God. Bruce, I detest feeling ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of you. You've let me down and you're letting your children down, so I'm leaving your ass behind to rub it in your face. I want you to grow up, go get a real job, and, for heaven's sake, put this teenage fantasy of penning the great American novel to rest. I'm the man in this dang family the way things are right now. It's not natural for me to be the dominant one. Her glance at me told me something horrible was about to happen. You inquired whether Stephen's D is as large as the girls claim. Yes, he does. He's hung and I've seen him in a bathing suit. God, look at how hung he is. I remember one summer, when we didn't go to the beach, he caught me behind the dunes and had me jerk him once or twice. Naturally, I smacked his face and attempted to dropkick his balls back into his belly, but he didn't try again. But, for heaven's sake, I wanted to snitch him. My desire was to suck him off. My desire was to extend my legs and allow him to stab me with it. Since I think he's cute, I also think highly of him. He's a man. He may be an aggressive guy, but he's a man. If I didn't love you, at least a little bit still, I would have let him take me in the dunes. She straightened her skirt and got to her feet. I'm not going to sleep him this trip. I don't plan to anyway. I want you to think about that. Because if things don't change, if you don't change, there's going to come a day when he puts my hand on that monster and I won't take it away. As I gazed upon her, I realized that today had been long overdue. We never got married. We were in a partnership, and I was failing to live up to our expectations. I was aware of her declining regard for me. Not even our camaraderie was as strong as it once was. How is that possible? How could a man who she didn't regard as a man actually turn on a woman? We didn't speak to each other again for the rest of the day after I let her leave. When I went into our bedroom after working on my computer until late, she had already fallen asleep. The following morning, she was awake before me. She was seated at a table on our covered back patio, sipping coffee, when I spotted her. There were days when you could see deer from the table because the house was close to some forest. Today there were none. I took a cup and took a seat next to her. When? Next Wednesday. That is, in 4 days. This is wrong, Tiffany, and you know it. Don't do this. She put down her cup and gave me a dejected but determined look. I told them you'd probably take a week or so while we were away and have a bachelor vacation, a chance to get away from the wife and kids. Some of the guys thought it was a great idea. It's going to happen. There won't be any embarrassment. All anybody at the company knows is that you couldn't get away from work. Hey, how about you take a little vacation? You may spend a few days in the Smokies or down in Key West. It may appeal to you. Furthermore, I believe that taking some time apart could benefit us both. Taken separately, vacations are not inherently bad. These days, many couples use them. Would you like a divorce? Her eyes lit up once more. You sob, don't threaten me. You won't try to terrify me with talk of a divorce just because I want to make you consider our life and I need to go away from you for a little while. I'm not putting you in danger. Just a quick question for you. Now, to respond to your query. No, divorce is not what I desire. I'd like some adjustments. I want you to show me how much you care. I cherish you. She simply sat and drank her coffee. I felt like I was saying goodbye to the girls, and maybe I was, because I spent Sunday and part of the following few days taking them to the beach, Waterworld, and one day, Disney World in Orlando. Tiffany found reasons to spend time outside the house either alone or with the girls, so I tried to spend as little time as possible with her. Even though we shared a bed, we could have been a million miles apart. Neither she nor I sought any form of closeness. She spent Tuesday and Tuesday night finishing up the arrangements, and on Wednesday morning she woke the girls up at 5 a.m. to get ready for the journey to Jacksonville International Airport, from which they would take a subsequent aircraft to Los Angeles and ultimately to Oahu. Her mother had stayed the night before, barely speaking to me at all. She took the girls outside after they had all kissed and hugged me and said they would phone me every day. I was seated outside at the table with my back to the backyard. It remained dark. I felt her approaching me from behind and that she was about to lean in to give me a kiss. When I raised my hand, she froze. I turned away from her. You still have time, Tiffany. You don't have to do this. She just stood there, utterly still. I have loved you since the first moment I saw you. I wanted to grow old with you. Please don't walk out that door. She remained silent throughout. She finally stated, we don't have any more time. I have to go, after a protracted silence. Her heels clicked on the floor as she turned. I added quietly as she approached the door leading to the interior, I won't be here when you get back. That's when she stopped, and I prefer to believe that she was torn. After entering the house, she vanished out of sight. I was sitting there for a while, till the light came up, and even after, that thin early sunshine, when the day had not yet chosen whether or not to show itself, made 2 deer come to me through tears. One was a miniature, the other an adult. Mom and kid. I couldn't quite put my tears under control. I thought back to the morning when my mother had called to inform me that my father had gone to bed the night before and had never woken up. I also realized that it had been 2 weeks since I had stopped over to visit them. I believed there was going to be more time forever. Abruptly, there was nothing. When you discover that the largest choice you've ever made in life was incorrect, what do? You shouldn't be with the lady you'd gambled your life on and trusted to bear your children. It wasn't the woman I had loved with all my heart until a few hours ago, but I wasn't really sure who I should be with. It was around this time that I saw they were getting ready to board their jet when I looked at my watch. When Tiffany agreed to take on our girls, I questioned whether she truly understood what she was sacrificing, or whether she gave a damn. It was a typical workday, so eventually I woke up and even made it to work. I hadn't disclosed the situation to anyone. I surveyed the house that evening. I didn't have much stuff, but enough to fit in the back of a friend's pickup vehicle. About 9:30 that evening, When my cell phone called, my girls told me how thrilling their trip to Los Angeles had been and how terrifying their lengthy flight across the Pacific had been before arriving in Oahu. They had already checked into their hotel, examining the minibar in their room and the location of the ice makers on their level. They gave the phone to their mother and told me they loved me. Bruce. After hanging up with her, I shut off the phone when it rang again after 30 seconds. When the house phone rang, I took up the receiver and tucked it between two cushions to block out any noise. After that, I went to a bar on Jacksonville's west side called O'Brien's and had a few drinks, played pool, and tried to recall what it was like to be single. I realized now, it had felt awful. I called some acquaintances who had just gone through divorces the following day and asked for the names of a few lawyers. Even first phone conversations warned me that I would run out of money before I finished most of their retainers. And I understood that it made no difference who I choose. No one would be able to match the strength of the lawyers Tiffany could hire, or her mother could gently persuade to take Tiffany's side. I then began my search for an inexpensive flat. Our residence, situated in a posh gated neighborhood halfway between Orange Park and Jacksonville, was valued at $1 million, a sum we could only afford thanks to Tiffany's $500,000 cash payment. Even though I worked hard every month to pay the mortgage, it was essentially hers. If Tiffany didn't scam me out of that too, I was searching for something decent. A two-bedroom on the west side not too far from our house where I could see the kids. The cell phone called again that night. Though I wanted to chat to Kristen and Kaitlyn, I didn't want to accept it. I pressed the speak button. "You miserable sob. Why do you have to?" Tiffany exclaimed. "I don't want to talk to you, Tiffany. I thought that was clear, that I talked to my daughters. So that's the way you want it. You're going to turn this into a major fight, just like you have with every disagreement we've ever had in our marriage. Can I talk to the girls?" "No, you get screwed." She hit the back button with such vigor that it must have been a hotel phone. I didn't speak with the girls that evening or the following too. On Sunday night, I answered the phone and Kaitlyn asked me why I hadn't been home to answer their calls. I explained that I had to work late at the store, which was a valid reason as I did get called out occasionally. Tiffany called me back after I had finished speaking with her and her sisters and discovering how kind Uncle Stephen had been to them and their mother. "Bruce, could you please pretend to be an adult for a moment and speak to me? Why am I behaving like a spoiled brat?" I prayed she could contain herself enough to keep her terrible remarks to herself in front of the girls, and tried to envision what she had said after I hung up. It wasn't until Friday night that I received a call from Tiffany's cell phone. When I punched it in Tiffany's mother's mailbox, Marge responded, "So you were able to take yourself away from your girlfriends long enough to answer a call from your wife. Marge, are the females present?" "Yes, but unless you start acting like an adult, you won't hear anything from them." What type of spoiled little kid refuses to communicate with his wife because she refused to take him on a vacation with her? A trip he couldn't afford since he insisted on playing with videos and feigning to be a writer rather than working to support his family. Because of you, you miserable failure, instead of enjoying the vacation of a lifetime with her family and co-workers and friends, she worries about what kind of crazy things you're thinking of doing while she's supposed to be having fun. You're ruining it for her, your daughters, and everyone else. You should be ashamed of yourself. Can I talk to my daughters? When you calm down and decide to start acting like a husband instead of a juvenile delinquent, we might let you talk to them. Right now I'm afraid you'll just upset them. Their mother has been so upset, they know something is going on and it's starting to upset them. So you and Tiffany aren't going to let me talk to my daughters. No, not when you're like this. All right, tell Tiffany that she can return to sleeping with Stephen and that you may return to sleeping with a couple of your married friends from that legal business. In addition, I have no girlfriends. I'm not your macho skirt chaser of a husband that never seemed to be content in your bed. Enjoy yourself. Marge slammed the phone down on me this time. By the middle of the following week, I had located a two-bedroom apartment in a moderately run-down West Side building and had successfully arranged both the first and last month's rent as a deposit. Over the weekend, I had moved in with a few friends, transferred some personal belongings, a chair, and set up home in my new location. My cell phone rang on Friday night after I had completed moving in and was enjoying a few cold ones with the guys who had helped me. I had begun to really miss the girls, so I answered. "Hello, Tiffany." "Hello, Bruce. Are the females present?" "Indeed. I apologize. This week, I should not have kept you away from them. You're driving me insane, even though I know it was wrong. May I speak with them?" "Indeed. Indeed. You may converse with them. Mom and them are in the other room. Can we have a little conversation before I put them on? Roughly speaking, regarding you, about us. You've escalated a disagreement into a nuclear exchange. I apologize for hurting your feelings by not inviting you along, but this is only a vacation. Couples frequently travel apart from one another." I could tell she was whispering when she lowered her voice. "I miss you, baby. I can't even do something about my intense nighttime desire for you because I'm always with my mother or the daughters, or Uncle Stephen." A protracted quietness ensued. "I was so very upset at you, even though I know I wounded you. Stephen, believe me, tried something on the dunes, but for a week afterward, he walked strangely. I don't want this man in my bed. Indeed, you are. Since we've arrived, he's been flirting, but he knows better than to touch me once more. I pleaded with you to stay, and you left me behind. Bruce, you don't understand. We are capable of being decent, loving, and self-sufficient individuals. I must maintain my identity outside of your sight. And your own money. And my own money. May I speak with the girls? Yes, I will obtain them. And once we go home, we can resolve everything. I'm going to sleep you into the ground, so when we get back, baby, I want you to be well hydrated and rested. I remained silent, and soon enough Caitlin and Kristen were talking on the phone. Afterward, I pondered whether Tiffany understood what I meant when I said nothing. We spoke for about 30 minutes, during which time I could only hope that Tiffany would have the kindness to pay the $30 or so that the half-hour cross-ocean cell phone bill would likely cost me a bank loan in order to be paid. Before I could hang up, Tiffany got on when the girls and I were done. Hey, Bruce, I cherish you. Don't you know that already? With a sigh, I realized that she had managed to catch it this time. Yes, Tiffany, I know you love me. I was ready to hang up after a lengthy period of stillness when she whispered, "You're not going to tell me you love me." I don't think throughout our whole married life that we have had a phone conversation in which you haven't told me you loved me. Something that resembled a sniffle was audibly present. She murmured softly, "Don't do this," and I almost reminded her that I'd said the same thing to her and wondered if she had listened. But I didn't. There was no use in being needlessly harsh when she would already be hurting enough in a few weeks. Yes, I do love you, darling. I have, and I will, forever. I couldn't say, but that's not enough anymore, so I hung up. Even with the security offered by gated communities, burglars did target expensive homes. So over the course of the following 2 weeks, I packed up everything I wanted or needed from our house and put it into my apartment, checking it daily to be sure nothing had gotten in. My junker car, my medical insurance, my retirement accounts, God knows she wouldn't have touched any of those, and my junker car were all in my name alone. I didn't have to remove my name from any of her bank accounts or other banking instruments, but I made sure to remove all of my precious little money from any account she had her name on. No alimony, division of property, or other terms were sought. Mr. Davis was seeking a divorce from Mrs. Davis on grounds of incompatibility. I had my divorce papers prepared by a respectable attorney who only charged me an arm and a leg to come up with the basics. Even though my attorney, who was the finest my little money could buy, had been honest in telling me there was no way in hell the court was going to order joint custody of the girls, I still asked for it. The graying, beaten-down little man who had collected my $2,000 retainer told me that the best I could expect for was maybe 2 weekends a month throughout school, with holidays and birthdays alternating, and maybe a month in the summer. That would be the worst part of what was going to happen. I already knew that, but que sera, sera. Almost every night now, I spoke with the girls on the phone. Thankfully, Marge never answered, and they told me all about the amazing sights they had seen, including visits to Waikiki, a macadamia factory, and beaches with black lava. They told me about how Uncle Stephen had taught them how to surf and how he had persuaded Mama to go out on a long board. They had crashed and sputteringly alighted, but Uncle Stephen had managed to get her to the shore. They told me how, while Mommy, Grandma, and other family members went out to eat and dance, they and the other partygoers played at a kid-only club in the hotel, and how Mama had informed them that Uncle Stephen was simply being a stupid man when she had walked in laughing late one night, her lipstick smudged. It should have hurt more than it did, but in some strange way, I had already prepared myself for the end of this marriage and the loss of this woman. Tiffany answered the phone and nearly always ended the call with, "I miss and I love you. Consume your vitamins." It wasn't difficult to tell her that I loved her, I just didn't know how long I would love her for. Sadly, I did. And then it was Friday again, and they called to let me know they were flying back, stopping over and left for the night before returning to the area on Sunday around 3 p.m. Their Range Rover Sport had been stored at the airport, so they wouldn't require transportation. How about taking a taxi to the airport so that we can travel back together? The girls are really missing you, but not quite as much as I do. I just said, "I'll see you there," without saying anything else. I'll arrive there at 2 p.m. I sat in the airport waiting area where their flight was scheduled to arrive. I drank a hot coffee and then another. I could have used a stiff alcoholic drink. I was jittery and nervous and couldn't sit still for very long. I walked around the waiting area into the windows where you could watch the planes land. And I made the correct decision. My connection with my girls was never going to be the same. This was the end of the before time of my life, no matter what happened. This was going to tear our lives apart. I observed the parade of humanity, the old and the young, the exhausted and the ones full of nervous energy. Young girls coming out to boyfriends and grannies and grandpas greeted by grandchildren, but soon the announcement was made that the flight had landed. I spotted Stephen, tall, dark, and attractive, walking off with Tiffany and the girls. He had a briefcase in one hand and was holding Kristen's hand in the other. The unhappy sob. A big portion of the gathering, around 30, were from Tiffany's company or Marge's law firm. I could have convinced myself that I wouldn't blow out at anything I saw, but all I really wanted was to keep the sob from killing me. He might replace me in the girls' lives once I was gone, but I wasn't out yet. People parted to make room for me as I sliced through the crowd like a great white through a school of tuna. Stephen was the first to notice me, and after giving me a quick look, he halted abruptly and released Kristen's hand. I'm not sure what I looked like, but it must not have been nice when he said something to Tiffany because she looked away, and I saw her become a little white. She tried to move in between Stephen and me, but two small girls threw themselves at me first. In between embraces, kisses, and hysterical exclamations like "Look what I got, Daddy," I think I started to appear more normal because Stephen's strained expression disappeared. Tiffany was all over me at that point, throwing her arms around me and kissing me hard, but I tilted my head just enough to let her lips brush my cheeks. I hugged her to prevent her from trying again, and after a little while I gently pulled her away, giving me a hurt face. I knelt down and hugged my girls. I gave them a kiss as though it were my last, and it felt that way inside of me. Tiffany finally rested a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go, Bruce. You have the remainder of the weekend and their entire lives to lavish love on them." At last, I got up and let them go. I took Tiffany in my arms and held her. Stephen gracefully stepped back and pretended he had other things that needed to get done right immediately when I looked at him. It was Marge standing next to Stephen that I saw. I think I gave her a glare. Still, she gave a frown in return. Tiffany tried to give me a kiss on the lips, but I turned so that her lips touched my cheek instead. She just looked at me, as though she couldn't believe what was going on. Marge moved to stand next to us. After giving her a quick glance, Tiffany said to me, "Why don't you go get our car, Bruce, and meet us at the departure loading zone?" Before Marge could respond, "We'll bid farewell to Stephen and all of you, and we'll be prepared for your arrival." With a nod, I turned to leave. I was aware of the glances I was getting from the people at Tiffany's company and her mother's legal practice even after she had told me what she had said. It was both interested and pitying at the same time, as if they were wondering how I managed to carry myself confidently after my wife left me. I pondered whether her story about me needing to work was true, and whether she had gone to such lengths to spare her devoted husband from embarrassment. After grabbing the SUV, I drove it to the pickup spot. I slid out from behind the wheel as soon as I parked and turned off the ignition. After securing the girls' seatbelts and moving Marge to the middle seat, I approached Tiffany, who was about to get into the passenger side. I gave her the keys to the automobile. "What, Tiffany, you're going to have to drive home. I came over here in my automobile." "How and why? I promised to ride home with you." You just drive home and get settled in." I guided her to the driver's side while pushing the keys into her hands. "I'll get my car." All I said was that, and I know she assumed I was going to take a car to the place that had formerly been our house. I know I should have said something. I was unable to pull it off in front of the girls, though. Furthermore, the idea of returning to our former house was too unbearable for me. I turned off my cell phone and drove back to my apartment, even though I know it was a bad decision. The house phone was absent. I would therefore never have actual knowledge of it, but I could imagine it in my head, and I subsequently discovered I was rather near. I could see her pulling up to the house, getting Marge to help her open and unpack the SUV. Unpacking a month's worth of clothes, trinkets, pamphlets, etc. would take some time. Afterwards, she and Marge would take the girls to the bathroom to bathe and put on jammies while reassuring them that their father would return home shortly. They would be feeding the girls by then, as it would be close to 7 p.m. after a long day. I thought she and Marge would put kids to bed early and let them watch a little television. Then, I anticipated that Tiffany would have contacted me for the 4th or 5th time about 8 p.m. and not received a response. I assumed she would eventually drop into my office and poke around, wanting to see what I'd been up to during her month-long absence. She would then realize that all of the paperwork, my old desktop, my new laptop, and other standard office supplies were missing. Everything was perfectly orderly. Everything but the stack of papers on top of which rests my wedding ring. I assumed it would take some time for her to process what she was seeing. After that, she would pick up the ring, pick up the documents, and try to figure out what was going on. I hoped that she would look at them and start crying. And then all hell would break out when Marge would eventually wander in. I was being a terrible coward, I know. I ought to have taken the car over there and informed Tiffany we were done when the girls were all down. I was also being harsh. Looking back, I see that I wanted to hurt her as much as possible even though I believed I was simply being a coward. She had shattered my world, our marriage, and my heart. And I wanted some retribution, no matter how cruel and low I was being. I was aware that Marge would tell her daughter I was better off without me and to screw myself. And I knew Tiffany would go crazy trying to track me down so she could curse me as a cowardly bag of crap because of that hair-trigger temper of hers. However, how? I had created a new cell phone account with a friend's address while Tiffany was away to prevent it from being linked to me. My cell number had changed. My home phone was not new. There's no way to find me using the previous mobile, and I wouldn't answer it. She was not familiar with many of my friends, but if she was able to get in touch with any of them, they would have taken an oath of silence and told Tiffany that they were unaware of my transfer or if I was staying with someone. I hadn't updated my address with corporate or for anything else other than to prevent someone from her law practice from getting in touch with a buddy and obtaining my address from their billing records. I had persuaded a friend to pay a deposit on the power so that it would be registered in his name. I knew that the fury she would unleash, stomping all around the house in an attempt to let out her frustration without scaring our girls, would be worse than her wrath at my leaving her with divorce papers with, in her words, no warning. I spent an hour watching TV on the inexpensive small 32 inches black and white TV with a DVD player, and I purposefully avoided logging onto my internet account while working on the novel on the laptop. By 1 in the morning, I was flagging. At last, the agitation and anxiety subsided, and I found it difficult to keep my eyes open. I got into bed and turned on the 7 a.m. alarm. After getting up on Saturday morning, I packed some things into a packing case, got into the junker, and headed down to Daytona Beach. I was going to accept an invitation from 2 friends who were enjoying their newfound freedom to spend a weekend together. Her law firm might employ the world's top private investigators, and they would still never track me down before the next week began. Since I would be returning to work that Monday, I knew it was going to blow up in my face. However, I had readied myself. Mike came to the back while I was replenishing the shelves with returned DVDs and pointed to a well-groomed, silver-haired man who was manning the customer service counter. As Mike was speaking to me, he turned to face me, and I nodded. He turned to leave. "Mr. Davis, indeed. Would you work at the Martin, Devon, Bailey, and Bartley law firm?" He did not smile as he nodded. He appeared not to be carrying any legal documents. Sincerely, I was taken aback to see him rather than Tiffany. I assumed she would be charging into the shop, steam pouring from her ears, fire in her eyes, and throwing hot lead. "Indeed, Matt Harrington. The firm instructed me to stop by and try to gather some information from you. We speak on behalf of your spouse. What do you need to know?" "Well, why would you file for divorce out of the blue with absolutely no warning to your wife, and then vanish off the face of the earth for nearly 72 hours, leaving her no way to contact you to find out what precipitated this? Mystery does not exist. She is aware of what caused it. It was triggered by her, nor should she be taken aback. I told her I wouldn't be at home when she returned when she left me and abandoned me for a month. I warned her fairly. She simply refused to accept my words. For the most of our marriage, she has been accustomed to wearing the trousers in our family, so I suppose she simply forgot that I'm still a man and should be treated as such." His expression was slightly surprised as he turned to face me. It was evident that Tiffany had not shared a great deal of information about our lives or what had transpired during her month-long vacation without her beloved spouse with her mother's legal practice. "She doesn't want a divorce." "Yes, please, Mr. Davis. Naturally, I don't know anything about your marriage, but there's no record and your wife didn't tell us anything about past marital problems. You've been together for over 8 years and have 2 small kids. It is unusual to seek for divorce in those circumstances. Is there another person present?" He apologized, saying that I shouldn't have requested that, and raised his hands as if to quell any objections I might have had. "Although your lawyer would advise you not to respond to any such question. In all honesty, getting a divorce in order to go on with another person these days won't negatively impact your case. Simply said, it is that." He cast a questioning gaze my way. "I've worked with divorces for almost 20 years. It is not common for men and women to suddenly want a divorce following a protracted and seemingly happy marriage. I've known Tiffany, your wife, since she was a teenager and have worked for the company for 15 years. I believe I am somewhat familiar with her. Additionally, she's been shocked by your behavior. No one can act that well. She claimed that she was completely unaware that you were even unhappy, much less upset enough to abandon her and your 2 girls. So, even though I know she's not that big of a fool, she's the biggest moron to have ever walked the globe. Mr. Henry, the divorce papers are rather straightforward. Tiffany doesn't have anything to offer me. All I want is to avoid her company and spend as much time as possible with my daughters. Furthermore, I don't have a relationship with any other woman or anyone outside of my marriage. That's none of your concern." Tiffany might be able to say the same, though, if you ask her. After expressing a slight expression of astonishment, he inquired, "Things seems like you set things up so your wife couldn't get in touch with you." "She still can't, not unless this store is involved. She doesn't have your phone number or address, and it doesn't seem like you've read or answered any of her emails. Is there a cause behind that?" "Yes, I'd rather not speak with her. She shouldn't be sending me emails. Her showing up on my doorstep to pick a fight with me or attempt to talk me out of it is not what I want. I refuse to do so." "Are you really that set on doing this?" Although she didn't ask, I feel obligated to suggest, is there any chance you would think about seeing a counselor of any kind to see if there's any way to save your marriage? "Not at all. I refuse to see a counselor. If the court ordered me to attend, which I doubt a judge would do, I would go to jail first. Ensure that she is aware of that." He seems truly perplexed. "Why on earth are you so insistent about this? Even in the most severe divorces, counseling has been shown to be beneficial. Not in this one." He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, I realized as I halted. He wasn't at blame. "Mr. Henry, I'm not being spiteful to harm her. I'm aware that you have conviction in your remarks. However, I know my wife because I have been married to her for 8 years. I cannot become who she wants me to be, and she will never change. She may not accept it, but I'm acting in our best interests as a couple. She must have the freedom to choose someone who is a better fit for her, someone she can be content with. I also require my freedom." He merely gave a headshake. "I'll relay the information, but you know she'll come after you, don't you?" "Yes, I am aware of it. That will be the difficult part of this, but it will not benefit her. Even though she won't listen to you, try telling her that." Tiffany had a long table to herself. Beside her was her mother, and Stephen Middleton was seated across from her. Matt Henry, Wilson Wilkes, the senior partner, and Mort Bailey, the founding partner, were seated across the table from her. Amber Dawson, a lovely blonde with long hair, was available for anyone who needed coffee or anything to drink. And that was essentially your husband's entire statement. It's not that complicated. He wants to end the marriage, have no communication at all with you, and have visitation and contact with his daughters. He also wants none of your assets or money. The jerk, Marge called Henry, giving him a glare as though he was plotting with Bruce Davis. Did you manage to persuade him to acknowledge that he has been mistreating Tiffany? That's what this whole thing is about, you know. Mother, Tiffany, have you ever paid attention to anything I've said? Damn it, just like your father, he's a lazy, no-good bastard. He lacks drive and ambition, and unless he has other girlfriends on the side, he wouldn't leave a lady like you and his kids behind. We'll discover that this is what this is all about, believe me. Bailey gave his chin a massage. At the age of 74, he remained robust, engaged, and among the brightest brains in the company. That is perplexing, Marge. The papers are fairly simple, as Matt states. He can hardly tie his shoes, much less draft a good legal brief, yet still, he had that little pissant Morgan submitting. He never signed a prenuptial agreement, Tiffany, and he must be aware of your enormous wealth. In this market, your house alone is worth a good $1 million. That's over $4 million in assets, and I don't see how he could get away with less than $1 million, not even with a benevolent judge and a mediocre lawyer. He's not requesting any money. That is nonsensical. With a much softer tone, Marge snapped. He probably has no idea what she's worth. Turning to face Bailey. The guy is a moron. It wasn't sheer intransigence that caused him to sign the prenup. He couldn't possibly have planned ahead long enough to consider taking any of Tiffany's money with him. Tiffany leaned forward and cupped her hands over her head. I doubt he would pursue my mom's money. That isn't the main purpose of this. He is wounded. I wounded his self-esteem. He's also attempting to harm me. For the first time, Stephen raised his voice and covered one of her small hands with his enormous one. I could tell he was upset at the airport. Tiff, but do you really think he would plan all this out, go ahead with a divorce, and chance losing his kids, just because you hurt his feelings, hurt his pride? She didn't make a big deal out of it, just brushed his hand away. I never would have thought so, but I guess he was hurt more. Her head was buried into her hands. She muttered, he told me he wouldn't be here when I got back. As I was leaving the room, that was the last thing he said to me, and I nevertheless left. Her mother wrapped her in her arms. Baby, you don't deserve him. He has never done so. His two stunning girls are the only things Dad accomplished well. But for now, he's done his bit. You have to take an upward step. You're a stunning lady. You're prosperous and successful, and you're just going to get better. You don't need a loser, you need someone of your own caliber. He's not a loser. Ignoring the males surrounding them, Marge gave her daughter a hug. Baby, you think I don't understand how you feel. Do you really believe that I didn't adore that self-centered jerk who abandoned us? I revered the earth that he trod. I lowered myself to earn his loyalty. Years later, I still loved him. However, I moved on from him. Similar to how you'll go past Bruce. I promise you, sweetie, you'll move on from him. I'm going to talk to him. Avoid. Be not a fool. Give him a break. She gave her mother a firm shake. I will speak with him. In close quarters, he's never been able to resist me. I have the power to alter his thoughts. We may also get past all of this and forget about it. I don't think that's a good idea, Marge expressed. Bailey responded, let it go, Marge, in a tone that said she should stop talking. It took you years to get over that bastard of a husband when you first got here because you were in love with him. She hasn't had much time. Give it to her. At least she will know that she tried if it fails. Tuesday night at 10 p.m., when I closed, she was waiting for me. I was unable to slink away from her since she was in an SUV that I didn't recognize. The SUV door opened and my junker got out as I was walking to her. She was wearing pants that bared her belly button, a less mature look than she typically wore, but it fit her well. Her little swell showed through her V-neck blouse. You were really going to walk out on the girls and me and never even talk to me again. I wasn't going to dump the females, but that was the plan. If you don't try to ruin things, I'll continue to be friends with them. Bruce, how are you able to do this? I believed you to be in love with me. Did you simply cease loving me somewhere along the way, or were you lying all these years? Tiffany, why don't you simply let things go? The wheels are turning. There's no turning back now. We've had enough. Why? How come we can't go back? Nothing is predetermined. Now it's just a few documents. It hurts your feelings. Your pride is also wounded. I apologize as well. However, one fight does not mean that you abandon your wife and family. Tiffany, it's not just one fight. It isn't because you abandoned me a month ago. It's not only that you didn't sleep while you were there, Stephen, and I'll never be able to trust that. Bruce, I didn't put him to sleep. Tiff, did you wear that skimpy bikini when you went surfing with him? Why would you say that? And was Uncle Stephen simply kissing you, or did he put that large monster inside your mouth for you yourself when you came in with your lipstick all smudged and informed the girls that Uncle Stephen was silly? Since I'll never find out the whole story, don't bother answering. It also isn't relevant. We're through whether or not you slept with him. The issue isn't with the bonding. What issue do you have, Stephen? Is money still the main concern? She put her body up against mine. I took her arms off of me and placed them by her side. Tiffany, it's not about the money, even though it is. Our marriage isn't married. We work together as a team. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. Our does not exist. Our 2 kids are the only thing we really have in common, and I believe you would take legal possession of them and break up with me as well. She took a step back and fixed me with a pained expression. That's right, you want me to be your property. Our issue has always been that. You desire to be my owner. Why are you unable to see that I must be my own woman? I have to live my own life in addition to our affection for one another. I want to possess everything you own, including you. And I want everything I own, including myself, to belong to you. A marriage unites 2 individuals. Making 2 one flesh was the meaning of the proverb. From my perspective, all that I have and will ever have belongs to you. We do not require a formal paperwork. See, I have faith in you. I entrust you with my children, my life, and my heart. You could break my heart and screw me over, but even then, I wouldn't regret loving, trusting, and being vulnerable with you. You can't trust me, though. You know deep down that I will hurt you, so you can't put me in a situation where I could do that. You recall our initial serious discussion. You desired cohabitation, to determine if we would get along. Your mom was totally on board, and I declined. You are in love with someone if you do. You promise something. Running shoes are not kept beneath your bed, ready for the day when you decide to dash for it. It was me who demanded that we get married. We would still be living together if it were up to you. Only our kids is true bonds. And if I turned on you, let you down, or injured you, you would always be prepared to leave and start over. The pain started to truly hurt when I reached out and held her face in my palms. I really was going to lose her, give her away, because this was genuine. She truly needed independence, so I was going to grant it to her. Tiffany, we've never actually been married. We are not married, but we do have a legal paperwork. We've never been connected in any way. We were just 2 people sharing a home, parenting 2 kids, and sleeping together. It's not a marriage, that. I've never desired it, but it's what you want. And once you abandoned me, I simply made the decision that I couldn't continue living that way. So return to the home we once shared. Put your signature on the documents. Give up trying to resist it. You go sleep, Stephen, or whomever else you want to, and I'll see the gals. Let me try to establish a life for myself while you amass enormous wealth and lead fulfilling lives. I pivoted and moved away from her. She made no attempt to stop me or to call. I believe I heard sobbing. She did, however, let me go. Every other weekend, without any fuss, she allowed me to pick up the girls. Instead of reaching out to me, she simply sent the kids to see me. I attempted to explain to the girls that occasionally, despite their love for one another, parents just couldn't live together, and that my love for them would never change due to whatever. My comment, sometimes it's hard to love someone who does not like you anymore. Sometimes they just become weird around you. We will see what OP does in the final ending. I will upload an extra one tonight for all of you beautiful people out there. Subscribe and see you in the end.